Welcome to the debate. Today we're delving into the really distressing Ghazala Din sisterhood scam in Washwood Heath. It was a scheme that, well, it expertly exploited a very close-knit faith-based community using promises of so-called halal returns.
Mm-hmm.
And the central question for us really is this: was the scam's success and the profound damage it caused primarily down to the systemic exploitation of that pre-existing communal and religious trust, the whole sisterhood mechanism, or was it fundamentally driven by the inherent manipulative power of the Ponzi scheme financial structure itself? I'll be arguing that the exploitation of that sisterly trust was the essential engine here.
Right. And while I absolutely see that perspective, I come at it slightly differently. I think that trust, while definitely the key, the necessary vehicle for getting access to this specific community, the actual efficacy, the scale of the damage, that depended fundamentally on the financial mechanism underneath it all. For me, the Ponzi structure was the real engine.
Well, let's look at the evidence because I think it confirms the primacy of trust. The scam worked arguably because Ghazala Din so meticulously weaponized the deep bonds of faith and community. I mean, using the mosque as her fishing ground, as the source puts it. She operated completely outside legal frameworks. There were no written agreements, just sisterly trusts and voice notes. That's crucial. When Aisha, who was the first major victim we read about, when she invested, the text says she did so with a certainty she reserved for prayer. Now that tells me the operational currency wasn't some kind of profit projection. It was that sacred, unwritten communal bond itself being traded and, frankly, weaponized.
That's that's a powerful argument for how she gained entry, absolutely. But I think the fraud needed proof of success, or the illusion of it, to actually scale up. The structure, well, it was undeniably an informal Ponzi scheme. It worked by using new investors' money to pay out those rare early investors who then became walking endorsements. The promise of halal returns, that framing served as a kind of ethical wrapper, didn't it? It validated the scheme, making the profits appear compliant with Islamic law, which, yes, reinforced the trust mechanism you mentioned.
Okay.
And this is the key part for me. This illusion was sustained by very tangible, albeit false, financial scaffolding. Things like WhatsApp screenshots showing fake profits and actual paid commissions to accomplices. The scheme needed this veneer of financial success to overcome that natural skepticism, like the kind Aisha's husband initially showed. Trust opened the door, but the financial mirage kept people walking through it.
But the reliance on social obligation over documentation, that's really key because it speaks to the ultimate nature of the betrayal, doesn't it? The complete absence of a contract proves, I think, that the power structure was based entirely on community expectation, not any kind of financial due diligence. And think about the shame that acted as the silencer for that burned sisters WhatsApp group, the thing that stopped victims from speaking out sooner. That stemmed directly from social betrayal, not just, a bad investment. This wasn't just about losing money. It felt like the dissolution of the community's safety net itself.
I have to push back on that a little. Because the reliance on trust, I believe, only worked because Ghazala actively provided proof of concept, or what looked like it, through the Ponzi mechanism. She wasn't just relying on her personality or invoking faith. The source specifically says she used screenshots of known sisters, women in the community, who had supposedly doubled their investments. That suggests the fraud required that veneer of structured financial success to overcome the inherent hesitation people would have. Trust might have been the filter, maybe, but the financial evidence was the fuel. It's what secured the scale needed to keep the whole thing going.
I see the appeal of framing it that way, but let's just look at the operational sequence again, and especially the resulting trauma. Din specifically targeted, according to the material, the devout, the lonely, and the quietly desperate. That seems like a very surgical exploitation of social vulnerability, wouldn't you say? And the consequences. The familial collapse described, Aisha's husband asking her, "You trusted her over me?" And her son's just devastating question, "Are we poor now?" That level of devastation, it transcends simple financial loss. It speaks directly to the destruction of familial sanctity, and that's a direct result of the communal betrayal.
I'm still not fully convinced by that line of reasoning, mainly because the core structure, the Ponzi element, is entirely portable and replicable. Look, Ghazala needed to maintain an image of financial success, spending the stolen money on a secondhand Audi A5 specifically for appearances. You can't easily scam people if you don't look like you've made it yourself. But even more tellingly, near the end, the material states she had already moved on to her next group of victims, and how, with a new fake property investment scheme, one described as generic enough to avoid suspicion. That rapid transition, that ability to just swap out the theme, suggests to me that the underlying Ponzi structure is the universally effective part. The sisterhood angle, while deeply harmful, was perhaps just an efficient, localized delivery system for what is at its heart a financial fraud.
Ultimately, I think the material shows that while, yes, financial gain was clearly the objective, the sheer scale and the depth of the trauma inflicted came directly from the desecration of that sacred, unwritten communal trust. That's what allowed the scheme to bypass all the standard protections people might otherwise have.
And I'd counter that the inherent manipulative power of the Ponzi structure itself, the mechanism of paying early investors to create those powerful testimonials, that's what enabled the fraud to scale up and replicate so effectively. It made the community trust an incredibly efficient accelerator, perhaps, but not the foundational cause of its success.
Well, we certainly agree that the source material details a truly disruptive synergy here between financial fraud and the exploitation of community bonds.
Absolutely. It leaves you to weigh which factor ultimately bore the heaviest weight in making this particular scam so devastatingly effective.